Welcome to First and Goal, your source for all things football. From the latest news to pop culture and sports cards, we've got you covered better than a lockdown corner on Third and Goal. Now, here are your hosts, Trey Thomas and the Bearded Grinch.
What is good, everybody? Back with another fresh episode, First and Goal Sportscast. It is October, and that means one thing. It is birthday month here on First and Goal Sportscast. My man Trey celebrating his, 21st birthday on the 8th?
You know, plus a couple. We'll put a few years on the back end. I'll keep that a secret, though.
Plus a couple. Had a good celebration. You were down in Charlotte, right, for the San Fran game?
Oh, yeah. Bang Bang Niner gang was in town. So, yeah, we got, for you Carolina Panther fans, I told you we were going to get Matt Rule up out of there for you. So
Matt Rule is up out of there. We're going to talk about that just in a few minutes here as we go through some of the top headlines. And, I've got the Halloween birthday coming up here at the end of the month. So we are celebrating all month long here on First and Goal Sportscast. But as you said, we got a lot to get into. Week 5 was pretty wild, some upsets and some big news. So let's just jump right in to some of those headlines.
And now, today's headlines.
So you said it, the Matt Rule era has ended there in Charlotte. I don't think it was a surprise to a lot of people. I think, kind of writing was on the wall at some point that was going to happen if the trend continued. Baker Mayfield's ranked 32 out of 32 quarterbacks in the league right now. What are your initial thoughts when you hear the Matt Rule firing, and who do you think is that successor? Do they dip into the college pool and see what happens there? There's been some questionable performance issues from coaches moving from the college level into the NFL, or who is on your top of the list of potentials there for Carolina?
Look, man, I think it was a long time coming. I heard Matt Rule, fire Matt Rule rumbles coming out of the Carolina Panther fans last year. Look, man, his record speaks for itself. It's terrible. I mean, he's won when I say 30% of his games or less than that. I mean, it's just not a situation to where every college coach comes to the pros and they do as well as they did in college, and vice versa. You don't see a lot of pro coaches don't necessarily are able to go to college and be successful there as well. I think Matt Rule, probably a good guy. Coaches, players probably liked him. His other coaches probably liked him. David Tepper pretty much probably liked him, but it's hard to manage grown men sometimes when it comes to making that jump from college to pros. Yes, you're grooming these kids to become grown men eventually, but when you're grown and you're making millions and probably getting paid more than that coach is getting paid, there's a lot of egos and just different things like that can be on the table. I highly doubt that David Tepper is going to dip into that college pool again. I think he's going to try to get a D'Amico Ryans, San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator. I can see him probably being on the radar. I can see Sean Payton was in the division with the New Orleans Saints. I can see him probably being on the radar. But I think he just needs to promote within the professional rankings and stay away from college guys.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think for me, the woes in Carolina have mainly been on the offensive side of the board. You've seen some wasted talent with the likes of, CMC, and then you've got, more out there at wide receiver. They haven't really been able to ever get out of him his potential. And a lot of that has to do with the quarterback. So to me, it's more an offensive-minded person. I think you mentioned Sean Payton, who's now, in the ranks of the commentating booth as he make a comeback. It's a similar division. He's in the NFC South, so it's an easy translation for him. He knows a lot of the teams there. The name that I always look for every time there's a coaching vacancy, and I can't believe this man hasn't landed somewhere yet, but why has Eric Bieniemy not gotten an NFL head coaching gig? I mean, you've got one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL with Kansas City. If anybody can do it, you would think he would be one that people turn to. So I wonder why it is that he hasn't gotten his shot yet. Is there something else to it that comes up in the interviews? But those are, I think, an offensive-minded coach is who I'm looking for to fill those shoes.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, man, but Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes kind of got into a little disagreement going into the half. I know Patrick Mahomes wanted to go for it, and Bieniemy was probably like, we had plenty of time and things like that. And Le'Veon Bell came and he spoke about it, man. He made it sound like Bieniemy didn't know really too much about the X's and O's about football. He was just more of a creative mind when it comes to just trying different things on the field. So, like you said, it might be more to it. It may not be, man. But Eric Bieniemy is definitely one of those names that has been around the NFL. When you talk about success and prolific offenses, his name is definitely at the top of that.
Yeah, I would love to see Sean Payton just get into another team within the division and see what he can do there. I think, that'd be just some interesting storyline and interesting dynamic behind that. So we'll see what happens there in Carolina in the interim. They're going to roll with the staff that they have, and we'll see how long it takes for them to fill those shoes. Another big story that was coming out this weekend, something that, a lot of water cooler talk was about, and I want to get into a little bit about the direction of the NFL. So what we used to see in the past couple of years is the increase in number of pass interference calls made on the defensive side of the ball. Wide receivers were tending to get a lot of calls, and then what you would start to see is offensive take advantage of that. So they would throw maybe a comeback route or something a deep where wide receiver could come back to the ball. They'd have the defender in between them, get that flag, get that penalty, and get the yardage. Now that's turned into this is the year of the roughing the passer call. We saw Tom Brady get a crucial call against the Falcons, which prevented the Falcons from being able to get a final drive and potentially win that game. Derek Carr getting a call with Chris Jones with the strip sack fumble. In fact, they didn't even count the fumble. They just counted it as, the roughing the passer call. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. Is the NFL getting too soft on these roughing the passer calls? And, what do you think the answer to that is? Do we start to bring in things like, go into a booth review for these type of calls? It's going to slow down the progress of the game a little bit, but a lot of these calls have come in some crucial points in the games where it could have, swayed the ending one way or the other. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, man, it's. I definitely think it's getting too soft. I mean, when you talk about diving at the quarterback's lower extremities from the knee down and different things like that, okay, I get it. You can kind of control those different things of where you're diving as a defender, defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, safety, whatever. But when it comes to the pure art of tackling another human being on the field, this is tackle football. The only other option I can see to solve this issue, if you're the NFL and you're trying to cut down on this and you're really looking to make a change, is two-hand touch. When you get up to the quarterback, touch him, you're down. Otherwise, we're no longer playing football, man. Like, a quarterback knows what he's getting signed up for. He's been tackled his whole entire life when it comes to football. And now when he's on the highest level that you could possibly play this game at, it's changed dramatically, man. And you're no longer playing tackle football. I'm disappointed in the league. I'm disappointed in the rules, staffing people, whoever's making these rules, and it's just disappointing to watch a game, man, and know that you could lose a game just because you tackled a quarterback. It makes no sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. And what we're starting to see now is quarterbacks are asking for the calls, right? One of the things I watched, I know some pivotal calls there in the Baltimore-Buffalo game when Buffalo was on their comeback trail. There's a pass interference call or illegal hit to the head or neck area of a player. And, you watch that back, Gene Steratore, all of the refs that chimed in during that live broadcast said, listen, that was not the right call in that position. Could have ended up costing Baltimore the game, although they let the game get out of hand anyway. But so you're starting to see people throw up their hands. And in fact, there was an interview with Lamar Jackson, and he was asked about it. And he said, well, heck, I'm going to start throwing my hands up looking for calls too. So now you're going to get into a situation where quarterbacks are starting to ask for it. The other side of it, which gets a little bit controversial, but I think it's really important to bring up, is you and I have talked extensively about this. If you look at the history of some of the players that are getting these calls, it's the Derek Carrs, the Tom Bradys, now the Josh Allens. The people that you don't see getting those calls are your Kyler Murrays, your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts. So I wanted to ask you, and this is maybe a sensitive topic for some, but I think it's important to point out, is it more that the mobile quarterback, because they're in a mobile position and they're running, that they tend to not get these calls? Or do you think there may be, and we hear about it on some discussion threads, a hint of some racial divide in there, as the traditional black quarterbacks are the ones that aren't getting these calls versus the pocket passing, standard Brady type QBs? Yeah,
I think when you really think about it, man, the mobile quarterback is typically a black quarterback, right? The quarterback that's running and testing 40s, that's running the 4.34s, the 4.4s, or whatever, are typically the black quarterback. So I don't see it as being as necessarily targeting the black quarterback over the white quarterback or of another ethnicity. Because I look at Russell Wilson, I've seen Russell Wilson get the calls, right? I look at Dak Prescott, I see him getting the calls sometimes. I just think it comes down to, we talked about this too, are you a quarterback that makes a big deal and throw your hands up in the air and hitting the ground, and every time you don't get a call, you're probably going to start getting calls because you're making a big deal out of it and it's catching the ref's attention. Or you the Lamar Jackson, you get hit, you shake your head, you go back to the huddle. Okay, I don't really have a point to call them for that penalty because you're not that upset about it. In your mind, you look like it's part of the game of football. So I'm going to call the game accordingly. I just think, man, if it's a chess match, we see LeBron James do it in basketball all the time. He doesn't get a call. He throws his hands up. Now he gets called. It's all a chess match, man. The more you complain, I think, at the quarterback position when it comes to these hits and these targeting penalties and lower extremity injuries, I see the referees starting to call this game more when it comes to these penalties, man. What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. And I think for me, I would rather see, so they talk about what's the solution, right? So we got a problem, what's the solution? I'm all for booth reviews on these types of things. I know it slows down the pace of the game, but to me, I would rather have the game officiated properly so that these outcomes aren't as controversial. You don't have to worry about that. Listen, that call on Tom Brady, nothing more than grabbed him by the waist, spun him around, threw him to the ground. His head didn't hit. It wasn't a late hit. It wasn't a vicious hit. Tom still had the ball in his hand. It's not like the whistle blew and he continued through with a tackle. And that could have been a game that the Falcons come and score and win that game. So when the outcome of a game is being determined by these calls, that's when it gets out of hand. I think that's where there needs to be an opportunity for some review on that. To me, if the game gets slowed down by 10, 15 minutes having to review a couple of these calls, I'd rather that and see the correct outcome of the game and just leave it on the field to the performance of the players and not in the ref's hands to decide it.
Yeah, there's a couple, and I definitely 100% feel you on that. There's just a couple instances of where I can think that you should be penalized by hitting a quarterback wrong. It should be late hit, should be one. Targeting to the helmet should be one. Lower extremity hit should be another. But if you have that ball in your hand, you should get treated just like anybody else on the field if they have the ball in their hand.
Right.
It's football. You are going to get tackled. If you don't want to get tackled, throw the ball. Go kick. Go play a different position. I just think these quarterbacks are getting too soft, man, and looking for cop-outs. And meanwhile, they throw a pass in triple coverage, and the wide receiver just gets obliterated, and he pops back up and is expected to go to the huddle and run around again. I don't know, man. It's just football, bro.
It is. I'm with you. Yeah, I think they need to toughen up just a bit and see what happens there. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll follow that story, see how the NFL addresses it, if there are any potential changes coming up. Obviously, with the light that's being shown on concussions nowadays, especially through the Tua ordeal, things like that. I think they're overly erring on the side of caution. And maybe taking it to an extreme. And I think there is a middle ground that they need to find. And what that is just needs to be defined by the league. And they need to come up with a solution that's going to, help not impact those games quite as much.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
So would you rather, I'm going to give you three options. Would you rather every penalty when it comes to these quarterbacks gets a booth review, i.e. going to the studio and somebody making a decision? That's one. Number two, would you rather there be no review or no overturn or no challenge and just roll like we did in the good old days? Whatever call is called, it just stands? Or would you rather a panel of people make a decision? Let's say 5 people and majority rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think of those would be kind of a hybrid. I think for those calls, I think it should fall into where not every play is challenged, but it's a challengeable call, right? So, that they've got the red flag that the head coach can throw out on a questionable call if they wanted to challenge it. I think it should be included in that vein where you can dispute the hit, and then it'll go to New York in the broadcast booth, and they'll be able to review and see if it truly was a hit. That's where it falls under me. That way you're not stopping the game, 10 times. But there is an opportunity if there is a questionable call that you could use your challenge flag to challenge it. That would be probably my solution, and then allow that to go to review.
Yeah, I'm to the point now, man. It's just the frustration of these calls. I'm almost ready to go back to the 70s and 80s. Just whatever call they make, fans throw trash on the field. Say some choice words, and we move on to the next play. But it's taken away from the game so much now, man. It's causing too much confusion. I don't care for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you get into these games, and if you wanted to, you could probably call offensive or defensive holding on every single play.
Yep.
There's somebody's holding somebody on every single play. So how far down the road do you get to where you're nitpicking to where, again, the game gets pulled completely apart? And I think it just needs to be some common sense rules that get implemented, right? I mean, if you can
imagine common sense.
Look –
Imagine that.
Right. If you can blatantly look at a play and you can see that it was the wrong call, I think there needs to be an opportunity to challenge that. So we'll see how it shakes out. I'm sure, this isn't going to be the end of it. We're going to hear a lot about it throughout the rest of the season. And I'm curious to see this week as you watch the games. That's one thing to watch out for. See how many times a quarterback is taken down, how many hands get thrown up now, and how that relates to questionable calls. So something I'm going to keep an eye on. So one of the things that's getting roughed in games recently, and it's not just the players on the field, Devonta Adams shoving a cameraman after his loss in frustration. Now the cameraman has filed suit. There have been charges pressed. The guy's obviously going to get paid out in some fashion. And, we're not uncommon to see, guys on the sideline trying to get that good picture that get run over. That's just part of the game. But when a player goes out of their way to actively engage with someone on the sidelines, what are your thoughts on that? To me, lost his temper, completely out of line, in my opinion. I don't think it should have happened. I think he should get fined, potentially suspended for some duration of the game or not. Some people will say the media has too much access to these players. The thing is, I can agree with that once you leave the stadium. And if you're walking down the street with your family trying to get something, you kind of ask to be in the spotlight. But at the same note, there should be some privacy. When you're in the confines of that stadium, that's your job. You were at work. Part of your job includes not doing the things that he did. And so what's your opinion on the Devonta Adams situation?
Yeah, when I look at this situation, and first I look at the character of the player that it happened to, and I look at if there's a string of events where they continue to do these things. And when I look at somebody like Devonta Adams, it's not. And that just lets me know that he just lost his temper. If he had that same situation again, he probably wouldn't make that decision. And he just has to deal with the consequences, whatever those may be. I don't think the NFL needs to bring the hammer down on him. He's already getting a civil lawsuit, which he deserves. That is assault. And he's probably going to pay the guy, like you said, and we move on. So, it's just one of those things in sports, man, and life in general. When tempers are high and frustration, and you look at the record and they just can't seem to get it together, he just snapped, man. And that's out of character for Devonta Adams from what I've seen from him on the field in his time in Green Bay and so far in Las Vegas. I just think he just lost his cool and he assaulted a camera guy, and he's going to get whatever comes with that and just move on.
Yeah, it's going to be a lesson learned for everybody. That's not something you can get away with. Assault, period. But again, he's at work in that situation, and it's part of the game. It's not like these cameramen just come out of nowhere. So, he's going to learn his lesson. But I want to keep on the continued kind of conversation around media. So we're talking about media there and media exposure. One of the other things that came up in the media that's causing some controversy is Ron Rivera, head coach of the Commanders, came out and literally said in an interview that the issue with his team right now is his quarterback. He called out Carson Wentz directly. I'm sure those conversations were going on in the locker room and one-on-one between, Wentz and Rivera there as well. But was he right to do that, to put his quarterback on blast in front of the media like that? Or is that something that you think should be handled behind closed doors?
You just made a good point when you said, I'm sure he pulled Carson Wentz to the side and had these conversations in the locker room. As long as he's had these conversations with Carson Wentz in the locker room, and this comment just didn't completely blindside Carson Wentz, I don't have an issue with it. I think I would look at it as motivating for me, like if my coach came out in public and said this, right? But if this is his first time having these thoughts about Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz was completely blindsided by this from man to man, coach to player, player to coach, bro, come talk to me. Come talk to me first before you feel like you have to go here with that statement. I'm sure he's got a lot of frustration going on too. It depends on what kind of player you are, like Carson Wentz might be that type of player that he needs to be called out, or he feels like his performance is better when he is called out, instead of somebody like sheltering him and trying to make sure he's not getting thrown under the bus, quote unquote, in the media and things like that. But you as a player, what would you take from that if your coach went to the public media and said that?
Listen, so Carson Wentz, first of all, it shouldn't be a surprise to him that his play is an issue as to why they aren't winning games. I would prefer the coach have a conversation with me directly. Is that motivating or not? It's kind of question. So it all depends, to your point, how the player takes that. Obviously, listen, they played last night, a dominant 12-7 victory over the Chicago Bears. Carson Wentz went 12 for 22, 99 yards with 3 sacks and a passer rating of 66. obviously it didn't motivate him a whole lot. So, they've got issues going on there. The one bright spot I think they had was, Brian Robinson coming back from his, shooting injury to play in the game. And he was, their lone touchdown there. So it really didn't do much for him. I think as a player, I would prefer the conversation, but I think you also shouldn't be ignorant to the fact that you would know that your play is part of the issue. But for me, I think just some of those things, it's like a family dispute, right? Not all dirty laundry has to be aired in public. I think a lot of that you can handle behind closed doors. And I think there may have been a better way that Rivera could have gone about doing that.
Yeah, Alex Smith kind of spoke on the situation. He called out Rivera on the flip side. He was basically saying, look at the play of your offensive line. Look at your defense, can't stop a nosebleed, but you want to go and look at the quarterback. So, I mean, it's one of those things, man, when your back is against the wall and you're losing like the Washington Commanders are and no gelling, no rhythm, nothing like that, man, people are going to start pointing fingers all over the field. I'm sure that Ron Rivera knows that this is a what have you done for me lately league. Yeah, you went to the playoffs last year and you gave Tampa Bay a good run on that wild card game, but if you continue to have losing seasons like this and you're not getting good play out of your quarterback or your offense in general, your seat is getting a little hot as a head coach.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you talk about pointing fingers. Let's transition now into a little bit of a week 5 recap and get into our week 6 picks. But based off a wild week 5, so we finished each of us at 8-8. It was a, not a fantastic performance, but I will say some upsets that I don't think people saw coming. The Chiefs, not in an upset fashion, but came back and rallied to come back against the Raiders in a game that the Raiders had complete control in. You see defending Super Bowl champions Rams again losing. They lost to the Cowboys 22-10. Have the Rams that's that Super Bowl hangover. You hear about it all the time. It is a real deal. You look at teams like the Steelers. When you think it can't get worse, it's just gotten worse. They were absolutely routed by the Bills 38-3. So start pointing fingers. Is it Mike Tomlin? Is it the coaching staff, the offensive coordinator there? I know it was under a lot of heat from the players. There's some talk in the locker room there. The Dolphins, obviously Tua wasn't a part of that game, but the Jets just dominating 40-17 in that game. So there's a lot of games where you can look at, pointing some fingers, and I think there's going to start to be some players or some coaches. This is the time typically where that hot seat conversation starts coming up. So when you look back at week 5 and based on where things are now, Matt Rule is the first domino to fall. Who do you think is next on maybe that coaching carousel hot seat?
I think if Andy doesn't turn it around, man, Frank Reich might be one of those coaches that might be out of there. You had Carson Wentz last year, and I guess you decided to go a different route, and you feel like you found your guy in Matt Ryan, and you're right back, probably worse off than where you were last year. So I think his seat is going to start getting a little hot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a Tomlin time quite yet. Obviously, he's got a legacy there, and I think he's working with, in the quarterback carousel there, you have a rookie and some kind of understated guys that you didn't necessarily expect to come out and be it. So I don't think it's quite time for him there yet. Obviously, in Las Vegas, you're there with a new coach, and there's going to be, a period of adjustment there. So I'm kind of with you. I think you got to start looking at those teams. Dan Campbell, you would think, okay, they're 1-4, but again, how much of that is on the coach? How much of that is on the team, the rebuild, those sort of things? And so we start getting these conversations of how much of it is, just how much do we give them a pass and say, oh, this is a rebuilding venture? When do we start looking at things? The conversation with Matt Rule, and this is why I asked that, is, I think when he was signed on for a 7-year contract, right? With the expectation of this may be a rebuild opportunity where they're going to have to get in. They didn't even give him the benefit of the doubt of the years of his contract. So in my mind, if you're only going to give a coach, a leeway of 2 to 3 years, sign him to a 2 to 3 year contract. Yeah. Why sign a coach to a 7-year contract if you're not going to give him the extent of that to be able to get a team under his belt, to mold an offense and a defense the way that he sees fit, to use the draft picks to really grow and create that team? So I think that's another question that we'll throw out there is, when it comes to that, is the mindset, should it be, do we not give the head coaches this long of a leash in their contracts to be able to go out and prove? Or, just start shortening the contract and say, okay, listen, you've got 3 years to get it done. And if it doesn't happen in those 3 years, we're going to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the biggest deciding factor when it comes to these coaches being on a hot seat and getting fired earlier in their contract is you got to look at that quarterback position, right? How many did they find their franchise quarterback and just other pieces didn't work? I think there may be more lenient. Or And are we bringing in a different quarterback every single year, and we're wasting money every single year on different players just because you feel like you still haven't found your guy? At some point, it has to come to point where I'm like, maybe you're not what we need as a head coach, and we need to move on. But somebody like him, like I said, is shuffling through the Baker Mayfield, the Cam Newton, the P.J. Walker, the Sam Darnold. I mean, he's shuffled through quarterbacks. You look at Frank Reich, like we just talked about Carson Wentz, and then Matt Ryan. I mean, he's starting to shuffle through a couple quarterbacks. Dan Campbell is such a great guy, man, but yeah, they're not winning games, and they're young. I think they're going to turn it around soon. He just might fall into a bad timing situation, man, where these players are not, mature enough in their career to get over some of these hurdles.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that one as well as the coaching carousel begins to start. You'll start hearing more and more chatter as some of these teams start to continue to lose, or can they start to right the ship as we get into these bye weeks and teams can rest and kind of regather themselves. So coming off of week 5, there were a few names to throw out. There were some key injuries. James Conner with a rib injury. Baker Mayfield, we talked about high ankle sprain, putting PJ in there at quarterback, and everybody's like, PJ Walker, who? Exactly. That's just it. They've got some issues there at quarterback. Chris Olave with a concussion, Pat Fryermuth with a concussion. So again, we continue to see head trauma being an issue that comes up each and every week. Rashad Penny out for the year, broken tibia, was it for him?
Sucks, man.
Just unfortunate. And
Trey Lance injury.
Yeah, the Trey Lance injury, and then T. Higgins is nursing an ankle issue. So we saw what that did when he wasn't able to come back on the field for Cincinnati. Their offense just completely sputtered, and the top that they're used to being able to take off on these defenses with the long ball was shut down once they were able to double in on Jamar Chase and you take T. Higgins out of it. So interesting to see what happens there, if he's going to bounce back, and they've got the Saints this week, so we'll see how it happens. So speaking of this week, let's get into the picks. Got a good slate of games. I think what's interesting is we always do our picks, towards the beginning of the week. And as you and I were kind of reviewing, got a lot of road teams this week that we're picking. So we'll see how that shakes out. Both of us had Washington last night in that game on the road at Chicago. So we're starting off the week with a dub. So that's good for us. So let's kind of rapid fire through these. Next up, we got San Francisco at Atlanta. To me, I think San Francisco just continues to roll. They've got the number 1 defense in the NFL. Nick Bosa looking decent, coming back on the field, on the practice field. So that's a huge piece that they get back that's just going to be able to just elevate them even higher. I don't think there's a way that Atlanta wins this game. This is another game overseas, so 9:30 a.m. start on this one. San Francisco easy for me.
I'm going San Francisco as well. We talked about the number 1 defense in the NFL. I'm sure the Falcons rank towards the bottom in offense in the NFL. So numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. Next up, we got New England on the road at Cleveland. This is an interesting one for me because, is it going to continue to be the Bailey Zappi show? Not sure if Mac Jones is going to be coming back or not. I don't think that's been announced yet. But in an interview, Coach Belichick even said, I'm not sure if he's going to be the starter when he does come back. Now, that's a shock to me. I don't know why he wouldn't be. We're not talking Cooper Rush here that's rattled off 4 wins in a row. We're talking about some mediocre quarterback play that's been enough to kind of keep them in some games. Although I do still think that New England has a shot at this game. But I'm taking Cleveland at home in this one. Yeah,
I'm with you as well. I think the Patriots will get it going on the ground game, though, or Ramondre Stevenson. But I just feel like the Browns right now are a better team than the Patriots, especially offensively. You got Myles Garrett, you got Denzel Ward, a couple pieces on that defense. I'm taking Cleveland at home as well.
I like it. Next up, we've got the New York Jets heading to Green Bay. The Jets surprise team at 3-2. Zach Wilson came back after injury and has, really shown himself to be possibly that guy. Some great things happening there on the ground as well for them. They're getting the ground game running. But for me, this has a feeling of kind of one of those must-win games for Green Bay. You can't let the Jets come into you coming off a defeat overseas in London by the Giants. You can't have New York come in and then beat you at home. So for me, because of the nature of the game, because I feel like it's a must-win, I'm taking Green Bay in this one.
Yeah, I'm going Green Bay as well at home. I don't think they're going to fall to the Jets at home, even though the Jets' offense looks good. Breece Hall, Zach Wilson, you mentioned. Elijah Moore getting going. And the defense is playing decent, but I just feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to let him know that I am that discount double check guy.
He hasn't had a chance to do that a lot this year. It's been a
Mm-mm.
quiet year for Aaron. So we'll see what happens there. Jacksonville at Indy. This is one for me. You know, we got a conference game here. Jacksonville's been one of those teams that's sort of up and down, up and down. You don't know what you're going to get from them week to week. But this is one of those weeks where I think that they do have enough to get it done. I'm taking Jacksonville to go in there. I want to see Sunshine kind of right the ship, get back to his form that he had a few games ago and really perform and, get himself back in the conversation as to one of these, boomer bust quarterbacks. And I think he's going to rise to the occasion in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars look absolutely terrible last week. I mean, they got smacked in the mouth. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I had the Jaguars winning this game. Then I heard rumblings of Jonathan Taylor might play. And then the key stat that I heard was the Colts have beat the Jaguars 8 out of 9 games at home. I'm going Colts.
Yeah, that's a tough one to go against. Got to have my upset special in there at some point, though.
For sure.
Minnesota at Miami. Again, this is a Miami team that just is suspect at the quarterback position. Not sure if Teddy Two Gloves is going to be back to take over the reins there. All talk has been that Tua is going to sit another one out. So we're now on our third string quarterback there in Miami. So with all the offensive power that they have, on paper, it's just not going to be enough to get over Minnesota. I got Minnesota on the road in this one.
Yeah, I'm going Minnesota as well, pretty much because Teddy was probably not going to play. If I knew for sure he was going to play, I would pick Miami here. But I'm going to Vikings, the 4-1 Vikings, right?
4-1, you got it.
Nuts.
Cincinnati Bengals on the road against New Orleans. This again is one of those games where I think there's certain quarterbacks in this league that when they get angry, they seem to play better. I think Joe Burrow is one of those guys. I think T. Higgins is going to be back on the field. I think this is a game that Jamar Chase, we start to see Jamar Chase of old. He was stifled last week. I think his longest reception against the Ravens was 15 yards. I think they take the top off of it there in New Orleans, and they walk away on the road with a win on this one. I'm taking Cincinnati.
Yeah, man, you got Joe Shiesty and Jamar Chase back in New Orleans for this game. So I'm sure they're stopping by LSU. They're going to have a couple of LSU Tigers in attendance to watch them play this game. I'm going to Bengals over the Saints as well.
I like it. We've got Baltimore traveling to the surprise New York Giants. This is one that I think if you were to ask, fans at the beginning of the season, tell me who your 4-1 teams would be. I don't think you would ever hear the Giants in that conversation, but here we are, the 4-1 Giants. But to me, I'm going to take Baltimore in this one. We saw their defense sort of have a get-right game against Cincinnati, and they have a prolific offense as far as the receiving core is concerned and their tight ends. That's not something that you see in New York. So New York relies heavily on the ground game, whether it be Saquon, who is emerging as, an outskirt on the MVP talk with his performance so far this year, or Daniel Jones, who can use his legs. But one of the things that Baltimore does best is stop the run. I think Baltimore's offense is going to be too much for that New York Giants defense, even though it's a Wink Martindale revenge sort of game because he was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore. So now he's going to be going against a guy like Lamar Jackson that he saw in practice all the time. So both sides are going to have something to prove. But to me, I think Lamar's just too dynamic. I think the offense is gelling well. And I think the defense is going to do enough to get it done.
Yeah, I'm going the Ravens here, too, in New York. The key to this game is just staying healthy. We talked about it. That turf at MetLife Stadium is no joke. Just hopefully both teams can stay healthy. I'm going to take the Ravens in this game on the road.
All right, we got Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh. This one's just easy for me. Pittsburgh is one of those teams that, I don't know how many more games they've got that they're going to win. They may win just 2 or 3 more games the rest of the season. Obviously, they've decided that they're going to go with Pickett at QB, and so this is going to be the chance for him to kind of get his feet wet a little bit. But you know how it is, rookie quarterbacks starting their first year in the NFL. It is not an easy road. So you've got Tom Terrific going in there. Tampa Bay, just too much offense. I think they get the easy win on this one.
Yeah, that's probably the only – I'm not going to say the only, but definitely the no-brainer pick for me this week. You said a mouthful there. There's no way I'm taking Kenny Pickett to outduel Tom Brady.
No, not going to happen. That torch isn't being passed quite yet. We got Carolina on the road at L.A. L.A. has had their woes, but no one's had more than Carolina at this point. Again, third-string quarterback there, head coach just getting fired. To me, some teams in that position would rally. Carolina doesn't feel like they've got that rally in them. I think L.A. takes this one pretty easily.
Yeah, this is one that was kind of interesting, man. Knowing the situation, P.J. Walker coming in. PJ might be able to get a lot more done than Baker Mayfield. He's definitely faster. He's going to spread the pocket. He's going to get outside the pocket. He's going to make plays with his feet as well. My worry is, can the Rams' offensive line hold up against another decent pass rush defense and Brian Burns and Shaq Thompson and company in Carolina? I would like to think the Rams will win this game, so I'm going to take the Rams. But, man, y'all better be on watching this game. Don't be surprised if Panthers squeak out of this one.
We'll throw an upset alert potential on this one. Arizona on the road traveling to Seattle. To me, this is one of those games that this is a 50-50 game for me. I can see it going either way. I think Seattle, again, at home, they always play a little bit tougher, but coming off just like a stinging loss to the Saints last week, I think they're going to be out there. Geno's had, one heck of a season for him, and I think it's a chance for them to kind of right the ship. If you look at, what they did, obviously with Penny going out, they're going to have some shifts in there in the backfield. You're going to see some guys like a DJ Dallas coming in and sharing in some snaps. But he was a productive back when he did rotate in, and I think he'll be able to pick up those pieces. So I'm going to take Seattle at home in this one.
Yeah, this is another NFC West showdown. I'm taking Seattle as well. Geno's looking good, looking like a top 10 quarterback this year, which is absolutely insane. I just think they have more offense than Arizona has, so I'm taking the Seahawks. Now, our next game, I'm going to let you go into this, but this is probably where we're going to split, but go ahead.
Okay, so this is the biggest game on the slate, outside of your own personal teams. We've got the rematch, Buffalo at Kansas City, the overtime game. Both quarterbacks came out on fire, throwing for over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. I think, when you look at this is a game where I could see you easily taking Buffalo and be like, this is their revenge game. They want to come in and exact revenge. Kansas City is the hardest stadium for visiting teams to play in. That's just known across the league. It's just a volatile environment to come into. To me, I think Kansas City, although you've got Stephon Diggs and you've got some pieces of the puzzle there in Buffalo, and Gabe Davis obviously took the roof off of it last week and had a huge game. I think Kansas City is a more complete team. I really feel like Patrick Mahomes has been able to prove that he can do more with less. With the Tyreek Hill leaving, he's incorporated. Obviously, Travis Kelce got the 4 touchdowns, but he only had like 28 total yards. So the chunks of yards were coming from players like Mecole Hardman and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and their rookie running back that's been producing really well. So, I'm going to take Kansas City in this one. And the only reason I say that is you have Buffalo, that's a team that routed last week against Pittsburgh, 38 points to 38-3 win. Had to come back in the final minute of a game to beat Baltimore. So to me, I think it's a little more inconsistent of what I'm seeing out of Kansas City. So I'm taking Kansas City at home.
Yeah, this is one of those games, man. I talk about Josh Allen making it to the Super Bowl. This is the team he has to get past, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. No, this game is not the AFC Championship, but it could be the AFC Championship, right? So I'm going to take Josh Allen and the Bills to rally with this one. I think this is a game right when that clock struck 0-0 last year and that showdown we saw between him and Patrick Mahomes. He had this game circled on his calendar. So I think every move they made in the offseason, I think every draft pick, I think every play they installed in their offense is set up for this game right here. So I'm taking Josh Allen against your Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs.
Yeah, I could see it. Listen, I don't disagree with you at all. This is going to be a whole nother show, but this is why I think the NFL needs to implement the college overtime rule and give both offenses a chance to score. But we'll talk about it another day because things may have been different last year. Another huge game, conference game. We're looking at, two teams that are fighting. You wouldn't have thought that the NFC East would be the three-headed monster where you're looking at the potential of 3 different teams, in there with records of 4-1 or better. But here we are. We've got the 4 Dallas Cowboys going against the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles in Philly. Is this Rush? Does he continue his momentum and continue that conversation about whether or not Dak comes in at the starting quarterback when all is said and done? My answer to that's going to be no. I think this is the end of the Cooper Rush era, at least for 1 week. I'm not going to say moving forward, but I think they run into a buzzsaw here with Philly. I think Philly just has too much on offense. Jalen Hurts has just been playing lights out and proven that he can not only do it with his arm, but he can do it on the ground. And I just think Philly gets it, although it's going to be tough. This could be one of those 50-50s. Dallas's defense is insane. Micah Parsons is in the MVP conversation, in my opinion. So it's not going to be an easy day at the office for him, but I think Philly does enough to get it done. I looked at this game, man. It's a primetime game. The Eagles are hot. They're at home.
I look at the Dallas Cowboy defense. Remember, I mentioned them last week when we talked about the Rams. I feel like they were the difference maker to win that game against the Rams. They ended up pulling out the win, but I just think that Jalen Hurts is a different quarterback when it comes to mobility. He's not Matthew Stafford. So I think he's going to pull a couple plays throughout down the stretch when he needs to get that ball to a receiver or Dallas Goedert or one of those running backs. I see the Eagles winning this game.
All right, and last game, this is a Monday night game, another conference game that I think at the beginning of the season when you saw this is one of those you might have circled on your calendar as, man, this is going to be a really competitive game, something fun to watch. But we have the just sputtering offense of the Denver Broncos, and they're heading into L.A. to face the Chargers team, who hasn't had, necessarily the season that I thought people may have expected out of them out of the gates. I think people thought that they were going to be one of those teams. And listen, we're in week 6, so it's not like we're saying this is the end all be all, but I certainly think it's one of those things where, people thought the Chargers at the beginning of the season were going to be one of those teams that may be one of those 4-1 or undefeateds. They are 3-2, so it's not like their play has been abysmal, but they just haven't seemed like the Chargers of last year where they've all gotten all the pieces together. I think this is one of the games where they do that. Denver and Russ there just have not been able to use the tools that they're given. And I don't know what in my mind would make me think that all of a sudden they're going to snap together and all of a sudden Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are going to be integrated in, and Melvin Gordon's going to be able to be that guy handling the load in the backfield. So I'm going to take the LA Chargers in this one.
Listen, man, this is like going, to your favorite restaurant and it's under new management right now. And, the food just doesn't taste as good as it once was, man. Like that brisket sandwich, something's a little different.
And it gives you indigestion is what it does.
Yeah, and you go and you ask them, like, who's back there cooking? And this dude, Russell Wilson, walks out. I'm not eating, man. I want the Chargers in this game. I think Justin Herbert is going to get back on track this game. I don't know if Keenan Allen is playing or not. Have they announced that yet?
No.
Yeah, I don't know if he's playing or not, but Austin Eckler is looking like a complete machine right now. Running the ball well, catching passes out of the backfield. Mike Williams versus Patrick Surtain II. I am very interested to see that matchup. PS2 is looking like one of the top corners in the NFL right now, and Mike Williams, we already know that big body stretching the field, he can go up and get the ball. But I still think the Chargers find a way to win this game, and they're going to keep rolling.
Yeah, to me, I think it's a close one. When I look at who's that quarterback that's most likely to get the game-winning drive, and it's not Russell Wilson in this scenario. It's going to be Justin Herbert. So that's our picks for week 6. The last thing I want to do before we get into a little fantasy football talk is I wanted to throw some rapid fire and get your opinion on this. So if the season ended today, we're looking at where the standings are. I want to run down the top 7 teams in each division that are currently in the playoffs, and I want you to tell me, are they pretenders or are they actual contenders? Some of these are going to be easier than others. We'll start in the AFC. Number 1 seeded Buffalo Bills. Pretender, contender?
Definitely contenders. This is my Super Bowl pick to win the whole thing this year. Buffalo Bills are legit.
I'm with you. Kansas City Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs, contenders. We all know Patrick Mahomes, baby GOAT. I mean, this is who they are. It doesn't matter what piece they have on the field and who's there. Patrick Mahomes is going to still do what he does.
Yeah, they find a way to get it done. Tennessee Titans.
Tennessee Titans, complete, utterly contenders. This team is not going to a Super Bowl. Derrick Henry is coming alive right now, but they just don't have enough pieces, I think, to compete with some of these top dogs in the AFC. Okay,
so then the question becomes, who is the team from that division that comes out and wins the division?
Don't be surprised if Indy finds a way to get in there, man. It would not shock me. I can still see Tennessee getting into the playoffs, but it stops there. I mean, they're first round and exit. I think anybody who comes out of this division that makes the playoffs that's it, one game.
Yep, I like it. Baltimore Ravens.
Baltimore Ravens are definitely contenders. I mean, Lamar Jackson is having one of those Lamar Jackson years that we became accustomed to, and why we like Lamar Jackson. He's leading the team in pretty much everything. They just got to get that defense on track and, getting a couple turnovers and stops and things like that, getting a little confidence going, getting pieces back on the field. They'll be fine. I think Baltimore is definitely contenders.
Yeah, I think he represents 88% of their scoring on the team, and they're coming into, after they get through the next slate of 2 or 3 games, the back half of their schedule gets relatively easy on paper. So,
it's time to get everybody else involved. You know what that means.
Absolutely. New York Jets, surprise New York Jets at 3-2.
New York Jets. I'm going to say pretenders right now, they could be contenders very soon. This team is young. They have some pieces. They have nailed it in the draft. I like what I'm seeing out of the New York Jets, but let's pump our brakes a little bit. You're not ready to play with the big boys yet. You're still wearing Pampers.
Yeah, I like it. I don't see how possibly, as it sits right now, 3 teams from the AFC East get into the playoffs. It's not going to happen. I think the Bengals are going to be one of those teams that creeps back into it, and someone's going to have to lose out, and it's going to be the Jets. Next up, the Chargers.
Chargers are that team that people said that they're ready to take that jump this year. I don't quite see it yet. They might sneak into the playoffs as a wild card team, but don't expect them to win a division or anything like that. Chargers are, I'm going to say, contenders, man.
All right, and last but not least, Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. If Tua's not on that field and they get these concussion things worked out in Miami between him and Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think they stand a chance to be contenders. So right now, I think the verdict is not quite out on the Miami Dolphins yet, I think, for the season. So I'm going to say pretenders right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And what I find interesting, if we just quickly run through the rest of the teams, on paper in the beginning of the season, the AFC looked like the dominant conference without a doubt. Now, if we go down numbers 8 through 16 and you give a rundown, I don't know that any of these teams, with the exception of possibly Cincinnati, you could consider to be true contenders to make it into the playoffs and possible run. Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars, Denver Broncos, New England Patriots, Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans, Las Vegas Raiders, and Pittsburgh Steelers. Every team's got noticeable flaws, noticeable issues, and I just don't know that any of them are going to hold enough weight to make a move into the postseason.
This is possibly bottom of the NFL, no matter what conference you're looking at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. All right, let's flip sides over to the NFC. Obviously, you got the only undefeated team left in the league right now with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Contenders. I mean, the Eagles are undefeated. They're going to run through that division. They're good on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball. They look to seem like they're well coached. They're definitely contenders.
I'm with you. We got the 4-1 Minnesota Vikings.
Minnesota Vikings, 4-1. You look good, but I think they are definitely pretending.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think the Packers end up somehow squeaking out that division when all's said and done. Tampa Bay Bucks.
Tampa Bay Bucks. As long as Tom Brady is in the NFL, he's always going to be in contention to contend. If you look at contender, the word contender, you probably see Tom Brady's picture beside it. So
no doubt
he's always going to be a contender.
And they're benefiting from a really weak division. So they should have no problems winning that division. Your Bang Bang Niner gang.
Hey, we contending. Jimmy G's back. Jimmy G has spent most of his career in San Francisco in the playoffs, and he's been to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship.
Listen, the saying all along is defense wins championships. You can't have the number one defense on the field without, having them in that contender role. 4-1 Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys, I think every year they could be considered a contender, right? But it's just something that doesn't work down the stretch to get them out of the either the playoffs or not even making the playoffs. What worries me is Cooper Rush is undefeated right now. Do you insert Dak Prescott, which you have to? He's your starting quarterback. Does that mess up chemistry? Do you get worse? Do you get better? I mean, there's a lot of questions making a quarterback change midseason. So I'm going to say the Cowboys are right now a contender. They're only one game away from leading the division.
That's right. You got the 4-1 New York Giants.
Pretenders.
I'm with you on that.
Nobody expected the Giants to, do this. Good for them, good for the fan base, good for the team. But I don't think they're going to be able to hold this up throughout the season.
I'm with you. And last but not least, we got those Green Bay Packers.
Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, similar to Tom Brady when it comes to NFL, National Football League. If he's on the team, he's always going to be a contender. I think the Green Bay Packers are definitely contenders.
I'm with you. All right, so that's contenders or pretenders. We're going to revisit this in a couple of weeks, see how the standings shake up, and see if our prognostication is on point or not. So let's turn the page now and get into a little bit of fantasy football discussion.
When your fantasy game is on the line, these are the players you need in your lineup. It's time for Gotta Have 'Em.
So I want to quickly just run through some of the high scores from last week's game, and then I've got a question for you that's going to eat up the bulk of our time on our fantasy football that I want to get your opinion on. So last week, obviously, we saw Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills put up points on the woeful Pittsburgh Steelers. He was QB1 at 36.2 points, followed closely behind, Patrick Mahomes. So it's going to be awesome to see what these two quarterbacks do against each other in this high-scoring, what I conceive is going to be a high-scoring duel on Sunday. At the running back position, you had a tie between Leonard Fournette and Austin Eckler at 35.9 points, followed closely behind Josh Jacobs at 30.3. And, good to see Josh Jacobs kind of get in the mix there. He was one of those running backs that I don't think we had seen what we expected out of him up until this point. At wide receiver, Gabe Davis at 32.1, and then Justin Jefferson at 30.3. Gabe, obviously, with the 2 long balls. As a wide receiver, 2 deep passes is all you really need if you can get in the end zone to go from 10 to 30 points really quickly. And in that flex role, Taysom Hill had himself a game. You wouldn't think that somebody would be able to outscore Travis Kelce with 4 touchdowns, but he found a way to do it. He finished at 34.1 versus Travis Kelce at 33. And then in that flex role, some people that may not be in that starter but placed in that flex, we talked about Breece Hall and what he's been able to do there with the Jets. He was at 27.7 points, followed closely behind Devonta Adams, who looked like he finally got on the same page with Derek Carr and 27.4 points. So here's my question to you as we look at fantasy football and moving forward. This is our first week with buys. And not everybody knows how to or has a strategy to impact bye weeks and what it can do on their bench. Some people take bye weeks and just suck it up and say, listen, I'm just going to keep the best players I can possibly keep. And the buys are going to be the buys. And if I end up losing one game because I've got a really heavy week where people are all on buys, I'll take that loss to keep my team together. Others use that waiver wire and start doing the trade. So what is your strategy to successfully navigating the bye weeks?
Man, I'll tell you like this. You buy on the bye weeks. And those are 2 different spellings right there. But I think you look at a team, if you're a team that's pretty much in the top half of your league and you've handcuffed a couple running backs or wide receivers or whatever, I would immediately scroll down to the bottom of my league and look and see what stud they have on a bye week because they need wins. So the sales pitch here would be unloading a couple players off your team to get a stud that you can sacrifice to put on the bench for 1 week in the bye week, and then you have that stud for the rest of the season. So right now, I would try to buy some of those players that have bye weeks right now because you don't have to worry about them missing action for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like a good strategy. I've always been one of those, like, come the beginning of the season when I'm doing my draft, it's kind of the best person available philosophy for me. So I don't pay too much attention on bye weeks. And I have had seasons where I've had 5 and 6 players all in the same bye week. And I'm one of those guys that I'll take the loss if need be, because one loss isn't going to make or break you typically when you start looking at playoffs in fantasy football. And so I'd rather take that loss and keep the most stacked team that I can. Again, if you're able to, use the waiver wire to the best of your ability and go after some of those players. And a lot of it's based on injury too, right? So you've got these injuries and who is that backup? So you have to start kind of seeing 2 and 3. It's like a chess game. Start seeing 2 and 3 moves ahead of who is that potential person that could step up. Like if you look in Seattle, obviously, DJ Dallas is a guy that I mentioned. He is not now, their number 2 back. He's not going to be forced into a number 2 role, and he's an injury away from being the starter there. So there's that somebody that you can pick up and stash on your bench that may pick you up a couple points, but they're one injury away from him then being that guy. So it's kind of just
that's a good strategy too. I just did the same thing really with Tevin Coleman. Didn't know what to expect when he got called up to the roster, but he put up 22 points in Carolina last week, catching the ball in the backfield. And same thing, if Jeff Wilson goes down, he's next up. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. It's you're literally just one injury away, from something happening to where your number's going to get called and you're going to be that guy. That's sitting there. And, Kenneth Walker III, I mean, he did a lot in Seattle, but again, is he going to be able to be durable enough to take that lead role, or are they going to split carries with someone like a DJ Dallas? And that's an opportunity for you to pick up some people. So different strategies. Curious to see what you guys think out there. If you guys have some differing opinions, chat at us, let us know on Instagram or YouTube or on our Facebook page, and let us know what your strategies are. But we want to get into our final little segment here, and it's that new segment that we brought into the fold last week called our 2-minute warning. And this has to do with sports cards. So we're going to get into a little sports card talk here.
Questioning your sports card investments? We'll let you know who's hot and who's not.
All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a controversial topic because you and I have been kind of heavy into the card game for a while now, and we probably know people that fall on both sides of this fence. And so again, when we do this, the goal is just to elicit conversation, and we're going to take both sides of this coin and really give a rundown of what our opinions are. But we hear a lot about flipping versus the true hobbyists, those people that are into collecting. And a lot of people have the opinion that flippers are actually ruining the hobby, that those people that are in it just to make money, that are turning and burning through cards, are having a negative impact on the hobby. And so that's what's going to be our question today is, are flippers ruining the hobby? I'm going to say no. Trey's taking the stance that they are, and I'm curious to see his reasoning behind it. So you're going to have a minute on the clock. Question for you, Trey. Are flippers ruining the hobby?
Yes, flippers are ruining the hobby, and this is why. They're taking the fun out of the hobby, right? People that grew up collecting, like myself and you, when you were a kid, we genuinely collected sports cards because we like these players, right? We like the sports cards. But now some of these kids and myself in general are not able to collect some of the players that they want because now everybody's jacked them up to an astronomical rate when it comes to breaks, when it comes to collecting them. And these kids are not getting an opportunity to collect their favorite players anymore, right? And in the same sense of it, it's getting to where flippers are taking up all the product when you go into Walmart, when you go to Target, when you go to online, and there's no product literally that's worth anything for these people to go in and just snatch. I remember a couple of years ago, I was able to go in a store and I would say, let me get 2 blasters. Let me get a pack of cellos or whatever. And I left so much stuff on the shelves because it wasn't a high demand like it is now. So I think right now flippers are ruining the hobby. They're putting it at a time and place right now where people are not able to have genuine fun like they did years ago.
Okay. All right.
You're not
Interesting
gonna beat that,
take.
bro. You're not going to beat that.
I've got it all day because, in my opinion, my humble opinion, flippers are actually helping the hobby, and I'm going to tell you why. So when you start looking at the hobby and you look at years past and where things fell apart, there's really 2 things. Number one, either overproduction, which as a collector you have no control over because that's done by the manufacturers, or 2, just interest wanes, right? And so when we look at the hobby today, the thing that we have to worry about is not overproduction because we don't have control, but is the interest going to wane? And what do these flippers do? If you look at some of the top rated YouTube channels that are out there for sports card investments, it's these guys that are going to card shows and flipping. They've got tens of thousands of viewers. They are keeping people interested in the hobby. People are following them. People are watching the videos. They want to know who they're investing in. They're going to know their strategies when they go to card shows. And I think what it's doing is just building continued excitement around the sport. Even as you see some of these sports kind of wane, where football may be done, Super Bowl ends, and there's that lull period for NFL cards. Well, people that are just true NFL collectors may want to continue their love for the hobby. So they're like, okay, well, what's the next sport I should be looking at? And they go to those videos and they look at these guys that are out there that are doing these, this flipping, and they see who are the next things that I might be able to collect. So in my opinion, they're not ruining the hobby. In fact, I think what happens is when you get these inflated cards and people that are going on pure speculation, what does that do? That drops the price down of maybe some of the people that you're actually interested in collecting. As a Lamar Jackson collector, I love the fact that people are all in on Josh Allen this year, because what's that doing? It's taking him out of the spotlight. It's actually dropping the prices on his cards so I can go and collect them a little bit more than I could. So for me, I think there's enough room in the pool for everybody.
I like it. Hey, that was actually grade A, man.
Hey,
that you shocked me with that. That was pretty good.
And you know what? I'm on the side of, I do think flippers are making a negative impact on the hobby. So I'm going to say that flat out. But I can see, listen, this is the beauty of what we're in, right? When you can have an open and honest dialogue with people, this isn't politics. This is a hobby. This is fun. So when you can take all the contention out of it and you can just have an open, honest dialogue with people that have differing opinions, that's the beauty of it. And we can all be an inclusive community, and that's how this thing grows. So although I do feel like there is some negative impact, I can see the lens, through the lens on the other side and the other side of the coin. And I can appreciate what they're doing and the hustle and the grind behind it. So no hate here. But it's just interesting. So again, this is one of those things we want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah,
what
that's
are your
the
thoughts
beauty
on
of
it,
man. Like there's not one way to think, and you could really, truly, not even trying that hard, you can see both sides of the story. So this is an awesome segment right here, man. It just forces your mind, even if you think one way, you have to understand why the other person thinks the other way they do.
Yep, I'm with you. Listen, all it is at the end of the day is an opinion, and you know what they say about opinions. Opinions are like a-holes.
Yep.
Everybody has one, and they all stink. So,
yeah.
Good stuff there. Curious to see how these games shake out. We got some really good things to watch coming into this week. Will the Giants be able to hold on? That rematch of the AFC playoffs, Buffalo and Kansas City. We've got Dallas and Philly fighting for the tops of the NFC East. So really good games on the slate this week. We'll follow up with you next week, see how it shakes out.
A little off topic, but the college slate this week is outrageous. It's almost like a championship week. So
good call.
Yeah, tune into that one. I know this is an NFL show, but these college players are going to become NFL players. So if you want to look at some talent of scouting, here you go.
Which of those games do you have your eye on the most?
Tennessee, Alabama.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to be watching that Tennessee-Alabama game.
Yep.
I don't know about you. There's certain teams that when they play, I have no affiliation or tie to them. I just want to see them lose.
Yeah.
Alabama's one of those teams. Ohio State's the other one. So any day that either of those teams lose is a good day for me.
Yep.
So we'll see how it shakes out. We appreciate you all checking in and listening. We'll be back on a regularly scheduled time next week on Thursday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.